Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube and podcast channel, and welcome back to another match preview. This is our third preview of the season, where we will be taking a look towards the weekend's game against Liverpool. I'm Scott. I'm your host for this one, and this week I'm joined by Matty, Iain, and Deka. Matty, mate, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Scott. You're looking resplendent, might I say. Very good.
The beard is coming off at the weekend, so if we do a match reaction and I'm on it, it's probably the last time you'll get to see
hopefully
it.
Hopefully don't tear it out watching Newcastle.
Maybe. No, it'll be gone before the match, so I'll just be plucking it to tiny hairs. Iain, mate, we spoke only last night on Canny Chatter, but I'll ask you again. How was your holiday and how have you been?
It was great. Very hot, and I've been really good. Back to reality today, first day back at work, which always a bummer. But yeah, all good on my front.
Nice. And Deka, you've also been away recently. How are you, my friend?
Well, I've kept my tan, which I'm happy about. I've somehow managed to keep that so far. I'm in, mate. I'm really good.
That's got nothing to do with the sunbed, Deka, now.
No. Costa del Nobles when I go in there. Not a 9-minute holiday. So I thought if I go on the sunbeds a couple of times to try and keep it, because I didn't want it to go. So I've been on the sunbeds, I think, 3 times. And yeah, you want to see me white bit? Yeah. It's all good, no way. I'm all good. How are you, Scott? Are you all right, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thanks. Yeah, it's a bit warm here in Amsterdam, but apart from that, I'm doing well. Looking forward to the football because I feel like last week it was a bit of a downer after the Man City game, but I think we might be able to give these ones a bit of a go. But before we get into this week's match preview, here's a little word from our sponsor. The GallowgateShots match preview is brought to you by Magpin. Magpin are the go-to site for high-quality, unofficial enamel pin badges of Newcastle United players, legends and retro kits. For more information, visit their website at magpinbadges.bigcartel.com. Right then, so Sunday evening, 4:30 p.m. kickoff, live on Sky, I believe it is. It's not TNT this week. At St James's Park, we will face Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Deka, mate, last time we played Liverpool at St James's, it didn't really go to plan. One of our few defeats of the season, but there was also obviously the Nick Pope incident.
Yeah, it was that seemed like a huge game. I remember going into that one as well because I think we're on a really good run of form. I believe, if memory serves us correct, I think it was Newcastle were unbeaten at home, and were pushing for top 4. Liverpool was starting to sort of catch her a little bit though, but it was one of them games where I think all of us were full of confidence going into that one. And there's this real sort of spice which has started between us and Liverpool. Well, it's always been there, really. I think even if you go back to the 4-3s back in them days, but you know the one where Rafa, when they got that foul, that was never a foul in the score.
And Origi scored. Yeah,
Origi scored. It's kind of from there, I think, where that's been reignited, that sort of rivalry, I think. And then now, obviously, with what we've sort of become and the sort of the adventure, the journey that we're on, I'm really, really looking forward to Sunday. And I think you should probably all agree Klopp likes to have a bit of a dig at us at times as well, which I think it adds a little bit extra spice for us as fans. But yeah, listen, let's hope Pope doesn't come out and do something like he did in the last game, last time we played them, sorry. But what I will also say, I think I've got a very similar feeling as I did that time in terms of listen, we'll be able to get at them. We're going to, we've got a really good chance to win. And I felt exactly like that in that game. And we got caught twice. We got beat, obviously. So we've got to be more than aware. But I am very confident, though, I must admit.
It seemed to be just like a 10-minute mad rush of blood to the head.
Yeah. I mean, with 10 men, we were still... And then that's just no disrespect to Liverpool. I know Liverpool supporters, they said second half, we still had the backs against the wall in spells with 10 men. But, I mean, we don't want to go and review that game, but it just showed you how good we were doing at the time to sort of move on. 2-goal setback, the keeper's gone. Yeah, I think we had the majority of the possession, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And we had a cup final to play, was it the next weekend or the weekend after, coming up? So that was obviously in the minds of some of the players as well. Obviously, we've improved 5 signings now? 5 signings if you include Minty.
Yeah.
And Liverpool, Iain, have added a few to their ranks. One that we were heavily linked with. Whether or not we were actually in for him, who really knows? But we've all did our YouTube research when the name was battered around, and he seemed like a decent player. Is it Slobbersley? Is that how you pronounce it?
I was going to let you pronounce it because I haven't got a clue. Probably just sounds like I'm having a stroke if I pronounce his name Splotchfly. But no, because they lost last season. There was talk about the midfield isn't quite the same, and there was a lot of aging legs. Fabinho, Jordan Henderson's went, even the likes of Firmino, and then Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I know obviously he wasn't a key feature for them, but they've sort of looked to re-energise that midfield, and they've brought in Alexis McAllister as well. So again, young, hungry, very decent as well. Obviously, World Cup winner with Argentina, and I can't remember. They've just bought someone from, I think it's Stuttgart. Is it? He's Japanese. I kind of for the life of remember his name, Endo or something. But they've looked to bolster that midfield, which is obviously an area where they thought that they needed to improve on. Going forward, they've got a lot of players to look out for. Obviously, Salah, the likes of Cody Gakpo, Luis Diaz. So they've got a lot of talent that will need to be on the game for.
Yeah, it's weird. Liverpool, they seem to have almost signed like 2 players in the last 2 weeks, and then kind of right at the last minute, they've had the rug pulled from under their feet, which I don't know. It's not very professional. I don't know how much I like that when that happens, especially when, like, I think Klopp in last week's press conference was pretty much saying, oh yeah, he's having his medical right now. And he was like on the bus, in the car going over to Chelsea because they had obviously swooped in for him. Matty, mate, obviously Ian's mentioned a few names there, but have you got any kind of well, it's Liverpool, but have you got any players that, we should be mindful of, especially with their attack?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you speak about Liverpool, when we spoke about City, last week in between us, they've got a team full of internationals, full of like superstars. You could talk about Salah, but for me, it's not just the new signings that obviously we're going to have our eyes on. McAllister did get red carded. He is going to be playing. Szoboszlai is obviously he's made a decent impact so far from what I've heard and what I've seen. But for me, it's 2 players that spent most of last season injured, and that's Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota. 2 very good players, 2 very dangerous players, one of whom scored 1 goal already this season, the other scored 2 in both games. 1 in both games, leading to 2. It just shows you that they did have a lot of attack and depth, Liverpool, and even when Diaz got injured and Jota was in and out the side, he had some bad injuries, that they could still string that run of form together at the end of last season. And now they've got these 2 back. They are looking dangerous. I think all in all, one thing to keep an eye on with Liverpool is the way they're set up with this midfield, not the position, the 6, but the 6 in front of the back 4. Because we've seen Gakpo being deployed in like a midfield role. And I'm not sure if that's his game. I've had some Liverpool supporters say to me that he could be a sort of a deeper playmaker, but for me, he's a centre forward, and that's it. Yeah. But I mean, you look at how they've sort of set up. Ian mentioned Wataru Endo. He's been brought in to be like a sort of hold midfielder, sort of a third choice to when they wanted Lavia and Caicedo. But I think they're lacking that in the midfield. And if they go top heavy, I'm not saying that we'll put them to the sword, anything like that. They could still very much be dangerous. But I think it's sort of, we've seen, especially against Chelsea, it was very chaotic, that game, both on Chelsea's part and Liverpool. But if they go very top heavy, again, one to watch is Gakpo and how he sort of molds into that midfield, because they probably will go Salah, Jota, and Luis Diaz as the front 3. But Luis Diaz looks like a player that the injury hasn't even affected him. He still looks quick, still looks sharp. So him and Jota are the ones that I'm worried about more so than even Mohamed Salah.
Yeah, it's a weird one for Salah. He's kind of, I think it was the first game of the season, he spat his dummy out a little bit by being brought off. And, it's almost like it's that he's in that crossover period where you'd probably expect him to maybe move on next season if it doesn't work out like it has done in seasons past. Who knows though? We're not a Liverpool podcast of any stretch of the imagination, but you just kind of see early indications of that. Deka, mate, you mentioned earlier about Klopp having a go, and obviously you made that comment the other day about Tyndall, well, the new law and how it's only going to affect us. We saw the clip from the Amazon documentary where Eddie Howe uses Ten Hag's comments to rile up the dressing room and get them going before the game. Do you think we're going to see, well, not see, but do you think anything like that will happen this weekend, or do you think, like House said, that was a one-off and it's not something you would typically do?
No, I don't think. I don't think it's. I don't think it's anything we do with the players that or anything like that. It's not really. And to be honest with you, even I think I said this on Monday on the podcast that I did with the lads. Even I look at that clip again and I'm like, it was even. I think even I overreacted to that a little bit. I just think it's more so of the constant digs early on about like the ceiling, them have got no ceiling now and all of this, and then they're the ones that are bidding for a player for £100 million, and obviously didn't want to come, but they still tried to, you know what I mean? And it's just this constant sort of dig that Klopp's always everything's against us, and also go back to that away game down their place where they were booing our players off. Remember, and they scored late on. There's just this real bit of rivalry there between them in terms of, and I think Klopp's behind that a lot as well in terms of how he gets their fans up for it. But I think to echo what Matty said, like I think it's in midfield, like where I think them obviously are struggling. They're not able to control games like they could with Fabinho and Henderson on the pitch. I know for example, a lot of people say Henderson just pass sideways and backwards, but you know what it is in that role. That's what you need, right? You need someone that can control the ball, control the game. And to comment on the Chelsea game, I remember watching that one thinking, wow, this Liverpool team, it looks incredible going forward, mind you. They've certainly got ability up front, but in terms of being able to control a game, I think that's what they struggle with. And I honestly think at our place, many teams struggle to control us at home. So I really honestly think we can get the better of them, certainly in the middle of the park. Like. But just to reference very quickly, sorry, what you mentioned on Salah, I do apologise, sorry. Look at the class he showed in that Chelsea game where he set up the goal. The first touch in that pass was just world class. So it really was. So that's what he has from nothing can change a game. So of course got to be careful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned obviously the middle of the park there, Deka and Iain. One player that they are missing is Thiago, who notoriously, pretty much runs the middle of the park in some of the games he plays. Do you feel like they've brought in players, like especially with the I don't know the name, the guy from Japan, who, or maybe he's there to replace Thiago because he has just had I think it was an operation he had in May. So I don't know how close he'll be back or if he's back at all anytime soon. Do you think they're just filling gaps, or do you think it's just bolstering a squad even more so based on what they saw last season?
I think the two main signings, obviously McAllister and Szoboszlai, or whatever you're going to call them. I think
we'll call him Danny for the
Danny.
Is that his first name?
No,
Danny
it's Dominic, but I just said Danny.
Oh, call him Keith. I think Keith's great in the middle. No, I think they're very much for the future. I think, obviously, in relation to Endo, I think he's been not way down the list, but let's face it, he's not first choice. They went in for Caicedo, they went in for Lavia, and they've been rebuffed by him. So I think he was maybe just a sort of horses for courses. I was reading a little bit just before I came on. He sees himself as a number 6. So he's sort of the defensive anchor in that midfield 3. I was quite surprised with how they utilised McAllister because I thought for Brighton he looked like he was sort of more of an attacking midfielder, but they play him straight across the middle. But like I say, I think I agree with what the lads were saying. Midfield is going to be key. And I think we'll need to be up front and we'll need to be on the game to try and control that. I agree again with what they were saying defensively. They looked a bit chaotic at times, even against Bournemouth. Late on in Bournemouth, they had a good couple of chances. So there's definitely areas we can exploit, particularly with the personnel we now have as well. But I agree with Deka. I think given the little rivalry that we'll have for it, given that it's a Sunday, it's a late kickoff, it's on Sky, I think the crowd will be up for it, and I think that'll have the sort of the edge that we need.
Yeah, well, we will turn our attention to Newcastle. We are a Newcastle podcast after all. Matty, injury list hasn't changed from last week. You've still got Willock, Kraft and Manquillo. Obviously, Willock, probably the biggest miss out of those 3. But it's nice, looking at the lineup last week and the lineup the week before that, we've got a bit of cover and we're not really missing him when he's missing. We can afford maybe 1 or 2 players to be on that list this season.
Absolutely, but you just, again, it's a steady seesaw. I mean, a couple of injuries. I think everyone's heart was in their mouths when Fabian Schär went down the first 2 minutes of the City game. Appreciate he does spend a lot of time on the floor, but personally, I think a lot of time he takes some fair whacks as well. That he's not like he's just going down for the sake of it. But I feel like we're a couple of injuries away as well from just things being a little bit tetchy. The squad's still got depth there that wasn't there before, 100%. But nor is it a Man City squad, and we're very far away from that sort of depth. Personally, I think from just selection-wise, I think we're going to see the same team. I think we know Eddie Howe. I think it takes a lot for him to sort of change and tweak. Whether there's been any injuries, by the way, I mean, obviously we saw Joe Linton go off. Could that call in some changes? Perhaps. The only other sort of change I could see happening is maybe does he experiment with starting Harvey Barnes instead of Anthony Gordon? As much as some naysayers will be fuming, Miggy Almiron's still going to stay there. I think, anyway. I think it's highly likely, especially against a high-energy team like Liverpool. But again, whether that change comes on the left or if anything changes in the midfield, we'll see because of Joe Linton. But that's the only two areas I see anything sort of change. I think everything else will remain the same.
Yeah, obviously Murphy, he'll still be on paternity leave, right? I don't know. The footballers.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think as a footballer, like, Roy Keane's fuming at him probably, but I think now he's seen the bet and been born, it's straight back to work. I think, but who knows? We might be very much more empathetic.
Well, Bruno played the day after, the night after his birthday was born, because he looked absolutely dead.
Sleeping. Yeah.
Deka, obviously we've brought in a new signing this week in Lewis Hall. Obviously one for the future, but we did see Liverpool feature last weekend. Do you think it's too soon for Hall to make any sort of feature even on the bench for this squad at the weekend, or do you think Eddie Howe will kind of just at least put him on the bench to get a little bit of experience of being a home player at a home ground as early as he possibly can?
I probably think we'll not see him at all. I don't even think he'll be on the bench. But having said that, though, he could be on the bench. But I don't think he'll play any minutes, even if he is on the bench. That might. But I think you've probably got more of the sense of him being there with the squad in the changing rooms, the whole works, seeing how we're sort of prepared for a game and how. But probably just watching from the stands, But I think the reference on him, I'm really excited for him. I haven't seen much of him, right? But as I've mentioned this before, the 2 or 3 times I have seen him, he really does look a player like. And he's that sort of front forward thinking fullback, you know what I mean? That I like, that's comfortable on the ball, can get forward. I also think it's mad, and I said this to the lads today, I mean, 18-year-old, and you're talking £28 million, and I think what I was doing when I was 18, like it's unbelievable, isn't how times have changed. Like, but I think it's it's similar to a lot of the signings, isn't that way making, where you can tell it's like an Eddie Howe signing, right? Like it's one for the future. It's one that can be here for years. Love how obviously he's a fan of the club. Of course, that's obviously a lovely little thing that we can have. I think going to the team on Sunday.
Yeah,
I agree with Matty that I think it probably will be the same team probably as City. I think against City. Sorry, obviously if Joe Linton's okay, I'm guessing maybe it didn't look great when he come off. I just think Miggy, I think Miggy's been getting a lot of grief, certainly on social media anyway. I think it's very unjust, considering he's top scorer last season for a long period of that season.
I saw someone use the word fluke the other day about his goals as well, which really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Just because he scored a couple of fluke goals last season.
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it? Yeah, it's awful. And he's still for me, he's still a key player, still a key part of the team and squad, and I think it's incredibly harsh. And again, it's been 2 games, lads. It's been 2 games. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we've played against the best team in the world, in my opinion, on Saturday. Yeah. And you know what it is, right? If it gets to 8-10 games in the season, you're still seeing frustrating performances, then by all means, let's try and change it. And you've still got Murphy the option off the bench if it's not working. You've got Harvey Barnes to come on. We have got options now, but I think just to say Miggy shouldn't be starting now, based on what I've seen on Saturday, it's just appalling, like, to be honest. But, I've said this before, right? And funny enough, actually, I will just reference this. Go and talk about Maxi here for a second, but I watched the highlights of the 2-0 today, just to refresh myself in terms of the goals and that. And Maxi was outstanding that game, I remember, absolutely outstanding. And I went out with 10 men, he had to go up front. And I always thought when he did go and he's gone, who would be the next person? And I feel it's just changed to him overnight. Oh, well, this is the person we're going to go at next. And I just think it's really unfair. I think it's really unfair. He's a very, very honest lad, hard working.
Yeah, I think there was stick at both Miggy and Maxi when they were both there, to be honest. And I think there was just weird lenses that people were seeing them through. Like you say, the frustrating one, Maxi, like you say, you've been banging the drum about him for ages. Again, I was frustrated with him at points, but I never wrote him off. And it's the same with Miggy Almiron. As a supporter, you see that he's trying his hardest, and the manager sees that, and that's why he plays. Simple as. I know returns on assists and goals are, they're important. They're very important.
Absolutely.
But to just write off that last season, when some of the goals were top quality goals, is just absolute, craziness. It's just crazy.
He got a few pre-season as well, though, didn't he?
He did. Another really good pre-season.
He did. He had a great pre-season. That's why I think I get more annoyed that he's getting grief that he's getting. And I'm almost positive, if I remember rightly, last season there was a pocket where he was getting a bit of criticism, and I'm sure he scored at the weekend on that game. And I'd love him to score at the weekend. I really would, or even just have a hand in the goal. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think it'll probably be the same team. I do think that we'll see Barnes, though. I think we'll see Barnes have some minutes as well. I think he's got so much potential. And I'm really hoping Gordon has the Villa game, that opening 10-15 minutes. Obviously, he's against Liverpool, all the rest of it, right? I'd love to see him have that real spark them early doors, like he did against Villa.
Yeah, I mean, another player who did well against Liverpool when he first played against them is Isak. Obviously, last week didn't really work for him, but he was alone up front, if you want to call it that, against a very good Manchester City defence in midfield. So you wouldn't really expect much from him there. But Ian, do you expect Isak to start, and do you expect him to make as big of an impact as he did when he obviously started against Liverpool? I think it was at Anfield, wasn't it? When it was his first game for us, where he got 2 goals, and I'm still saying it's 2 goals. Even though one was chalked off for offside. It was marginal. But are you still expecting Isak to start, or do you think it's Wilson's turn to get a run out?
No, I think it'll be the same team. Again, just with if they're pressing forward and how much they can be exploited at the back, I think Isak's pace and the way he carries the ball as well, I think it can be a really good sort of weapon for against Liverpool. Seeing like people even saying like, "Oh, Isak's not a striker; he's like a winger." It's like he's just nearly scored a hat-trick against Aston Villa, who, let's face it, like the Villa game, everyone was fairly nervous, like it's going to be a big game, and he made them like, he was up against a poor defence. Like Pau Torres isn't a poor defender, neither is Ezri Konsa by all accounts. Like, and he's nearly scored a hat. Some people just absolutely blow me mind with their opinions, to be honest. But I think very much in agreement. I think it'll be the exact same team. Obviously, that's accounting for no injuries. The interesting thing, I've seen a lot of talk. I don't know if Trent Alexander-Arnold's fit for Liverpool. So that would be an interesting battle, I think, going up against him, because for me, Trent, I think he is good going forward, but defensively he's not so good. So again, another area that we could potentially exploit.
I think I was watching some before the season started, and they were interviewing him, and they were talking about him being used higher up the field. So I don't know if in their pre-season they've used him more as a left winger or a right winger, as opposed to a defender. So maybe
he played centre mid for the England games at the end of the season as well, didn't he?
I've just checked there actually, and they've apparently both Diaz and Trent, are fine. Apparently there was a risk for both of them, but they're both trained, so they're going to be playing. Which,
good.
You go back to the home game last season, like Trent's ball over the top, was for the first goal. Yeah. That is the class that he has. Like, I appreciate defensively he's suspect, but on the ball there's not many better, finding that pass. So and we found out. I watched that goal back there, and we'll give him far too much time in the middle. He just plays one ball into Nunes, it's a goal. So yeah, he is good. He's just not very good defensively.
We are recording this before the press conferences, so obviously any injuries that occur from there we don't know about. But if the Andy Sixsmith show is on this week, we'll be able to talk about it there on Friday. So we'll see what happens there. We'll move on to our predictions, and as always this season, we'll start with our members' prediction. We have Graham, who's one of our members, and here is Graham's prediction for Liverpool.
Hi guys, I'm Graham from Scotland. I've been a Newcastle fan since 1984. my prediction for the game against Liverpool is a 3-1 victory to us, with the goal scorers being Miggy, Isak and Barnes. Come on.
There you have it, 3-1. They are Deka, Miggy goal. So Graham believes. And Barnes, you might be thinking he's starting. He didn't say if it's going to be on or off the bench. And then Isak Iain, as we were just discussing. Matty, are you as confident as our friend Graham when it comes to your prediction?
Probably not, no. But I mean, it's
asking the wrong person there.
Yeah. I don't. I don't want this to be my gimmick all the time. I've been saying for the last I'm the pessimist and all that stuff. But I was just looking at the stats during Graham's message there, and thanks, Graham, by the way. But I was looking at that last game, and he's me thinking we had the majority of the possession with 10 men against Liverpool, but actually they had 63% of it. But I do remember that second half us being fantastic.
Hit the ball.
Really, But I mean, that's by the by. For me, it's another one of those fixtures that, although we've started the season with that game against Villa absolutely fantastically, and the performance against Manchester City has been, by some areas of the fan base, been blown way out of proportion. It's still a fixture that I think needs to be respected, but can also be seen as a chance to not pull a rabbit out of the hat, but just get some points on the board. Liverpool are a great team. They've got a very, very good manager, and they've got some very, very good players. And it would be silly of us to think, just because we've had that great season last season, that we could be really far-flung favourites for this. That being said, though, we've talked about the midfield battle, and if Tonali, Guimaraes, and hopefully Joe Linton are on song, then that's definitely an area where we can exploit it and build attacks from. We've got the defence there that can be resolute and hopefully not concede like we did against them last season, and no madness from Nick Pope. And there's definitely ways we can hurt them, but there's ways they can hurt us. And I am sitting on the fence a little bit, but for me, I mean, do you want a prediction from me now, or do you want a prediction from me later? Prediction right now? I'm going to go 1-1. I'm going to go 1-1. And do you know what? As long as it's not a 1-0 and they snatch it at the death, I'd take that now. If you'd give me them 3 fixtures at the start of the season and said 4 points, I'd have snatched your hand off. I know I don't have small club mentality or any of that BS that some people say. You need to be going into every game hoping that you win. Of course I do. And I know we've got enough to hurt teams, every team in the Premier League, but we are still on a slow sort of growth trajectory, even though that 4th place finish spiked it a little bit. So for me, a 1-1 wouldn't be a bad result, not at all. And I hope we get at least a point, because I'm on my stag do this weekend and I don't want to be sad.
Oh.
Definitely not. Well, we'll put a word in and we'll get them to do it for you, man.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thank you. That's what Eddie should be saying instead of forget the Klopp comments or Ten Hag's comments. Yeah. Just play this. Matty's on his stag do. He's getting married. Let's give it to him. So
good point.
Iain, mate, what is your prediction for this one?
I was really confident, but then when I sat and thought about it logically, I was really confident that would
logically.
I was really confident that would go in and perform really well against City and get something in. We didn't, by all accounts, we weren't horrendous, but they were just a class above. And like we say, Liverpool do have those world-class players. I think, to be honest, we do owe them one from last season. Obviously, the Nick Pope sending off, and then at their place, the goal in the 187th or whatever it was.
The Nick Pope sending off was a sending off, though.
100% sending off.
You're saying that as if we owe them one because it was an injustice. It was one of the biggest red cards I've ever seen in my life.
100% it was. I feel, because, like I say, it's a Sunday game, it's at home. I think Eddie Howe looked at what we didn't do too well against Man City and implement that this week. So I'm going to go for a confident 2-1 win. I didn't sound very confident saying that at all, though, did I? But no, I'm going to go 2-1 win. But what it is, I agree with Matt. You get a point out of it. Not a bad result at all.
Awesome. Deka?
Well, listen.
What's your prediction?
Listen, we're going to smash these all over. I'm telling you. Listen.
You're on Graham's side of the fence, are you?
Honestly, right? I'm with Graham all the way. So I think I do need to rein it in a little bit for myself, because I honestly feel like we're invincible at home, right? I honestly think at home we can beat anyone, right? That's how I feel. And when our tails are up, right, look what we did to Spurs, and I'm not saying it's going to be the Spurs game. I'm just saying, look what we did to Villa. I was worried about the Villa game. Don't get us wrong, right? At the moment in our building, on TV, afternoon kickoff, I think we can beat anyone that comes in front of us, right? And I think going back to what I said before about the midfield battle, that's where I think we can really exploit that. And I'm going for 3-1. I'm going to go with what Graham said. 3-1 was what I was thinking. But secretly, I think it could be more. So, yeah, honestly, no, I am.
Not a secret when you say it out loud.
I shouldn't be that. I shouldn't probably be that confident, right? I shouldn't be.
No, you shouldn't.
I'm telling you, there's something about being at home. I just think we're going to blow them away. So there we go. 3-1.
Nice.
Possibly 5.
3-1.
No, 3.
Possibly 5. Okay.
It's going to be a clip of life when we get beat 1-0 here.
You're going to go viral, mate. Someone's going to find this clip. They're going to they did with Mark at the Everton game.
3-1.
And Nelly said RedTube there. I don't know what the Liverpool YouTube channel is. It's not RedTube though, is it?
Yeah, it's
definitely not that.
I'm going to go for, I think we'll sneak a 1-0 win, but I think it'll be a good performance. I agree with Deka. I think the midfield will be where we might edge it, and that might nullify Liverpool's attack. But like Matty said, obviously they've got players who can kind of take the midfield out of the equation with one pass. But I think it'll be a 1-0 victory. I think it'll be a fairly early goal, if I'm being honest. I think maybe his first 20 minutes with the crowd getting riled up and being kind of behind them, and then it'll be it'll be a nervy rest of the game. And I don't want to say how many minutes it'll be, because it could be 60, it could be 70, it could be 90 minutes after that 20 minutes gone, because it definitely won't be 60. But because who knows with the added time, and especially the added time with Liverpool, we'll see what happens there. We could be playing for 20 minutes at the end of the game, waiting for the referee. Does anybody want to add anything before we wrap this one up?
Speaking of predictions and probabilities and all that stuff, how probable do you think it is that there's going to be not controversial, like a big controversial refereeing decision this game? I mean, there will be one this weekend. We know there will be. The fact that there's been 3 or 4 spread across 2 weekends of football already. I mean, I'm not confident that there's going to be something that should have been overturned, something that should have been given, because this is a full can of worms I'm going to open up, and I don't want to go on it for too long. But some of these decisions have been absolutely shocking. I mean, Liverpool in themselves have just had a red card overturned. They had a penalty that was
never a penalty, by the way.
Just mind blowing how the penalty's given. But for me, we're talking about a different team, but that Man United one with Onana is one of the worst decisions I've seen not given in recent, last couple of years. But I'm just, what's going on? How is this happening? How can Scott, Ian, Deka, and me watch television, see the replays that these officials are getting, and go, well, that's clear and obviously wrong. That's wrong. And then these people are saying they don't want to re-referee games. It's absolutely baffling me.
It's scary, mate, and I don't have the answer, because I think putting a replay. Let's go back to that Onana one for the Wolves Man United game. If you go back to that moment and you've got an opportunity to watch a replay of that, within two views, that's a penalty. And for them not to be able to see that, it's mind blowing. Do you know what it is? I'm saying there, we'll have too much of them. We'll do this, we'll do that. And my mind never ever goes to that. I never think, what about a dodgy decision? Because you never know, right? They could get a penalty, or we might get a red card that we don't think was, or whatever.
We could go forward. I mean, we could get a penalty.
You're right. You're right. You're right. It could. But I think that you're absolutely right. I think it's that McAllister red card. It's rightfully been overturned. Obviously, that just shouldn't be a red card. Do you know what I mean?
Well, for me though, refereeing's a rock hard job. Personally, I think I'm one of these people banging the drum for fund it even more, incentivize it even more, so that you're going to get better referees coming through. Because right now it's a thankless task, because you do get hated on, and you get abuse, and it's awful. Oh, yeah. So you should be getting paid for being basically abused every weekend, whether that's on a Sunday League pitch or with the Premier League. I totally agree with that. But when you watch, I was watching the BT's, not the Sky Sports Soccer Saturday last Saturday, when that's happened, when that McAllister incident happens, the full panel are going, that's not a red card in a month of Sundays. And Mike Dean goes, no, it is. it's a red card. Mike Dean's in the studio, and we all know about Mike Dean. But Mike Dean is just going, no, it's a red card. And you watch it back, and you're like, that's meant to be one of the best refs we've produced in the last 10 years, telling a bunch of footballers that was a red card, and it gets rescinded. I mean, it's crazy. And again, it's a tough job, but I just don't get where this ineptitude to review decisions has came from.
Even like the length of time it takes. Like I was watching the Women's World Cup, and that's another thing that they were trialing was the communication of like how they've reached that decision. And to me, they weren't doing that. They were just saying, I've reviewed it. I can see a handball. They weren't explaining why it was a handball or why it was a foul or whatever. But the handball that we conceded against Spain, like I watched that once, didn't think it was a handball. Seeing the replay, I was like, no, handball. And it took 5 minutes to and it was like it was just watching the same like second and a half clip over and over and over. It's like nothing's going to change. It's the same pictures you're seeing. I can see it, and I'm half cut because I'm on pina coladas. Like it's like it's a blatant handball. Why is it take? It just honestly, it baffles us, and it kind of makes you go and think like, is there like something more like dark about it? Is there a conspiracy?
No, I don't think there is. I was pointing out this when we made it. And again, Scott, I'm so sorry to have opened this kind of worms for the last 5 minutes of the podcast. But I was talking to a friend about it, and he's a Liverpool supporter. We were in a group with Man United supporters, Middlesbrough supporters, all these people who look at the football through a different lens. But they just said it's got to the point now where it's not. There's no conspiracies. There's no, when Newcastle, there's loads of people banging the drum last season about they were trying to stop us getting the top four, give your head a shake. Man United fans saying that they weren't getting the decisions, but then you look at it across the board, it's just inept. It's just bad. Like, not for everyone, but we had some stinkers. The own goal foul on Joe Willock against Palace last season was awful. Yep. But bloody hell, remember when Jimenez went through an on goal against Pope and he brought him down, and it was just that's a red card all day long. Or at least a penalty or a free kick or whatever it was, and it just wasn't. Nothing was given. It's just it's crazy, and I get the trying to set criteria so that it's not. But if, like Ian said, if they just went, you need to look at that. You'd run over the monitor and make a decision straight away rather than run around for 5 minutes waiting for someone in your ear to tell you. I just don't get how illogical it is. But we'll do another podcast on this another time after we get 2 red cards against Liverpool that weren't red cards.
And a penalty.
The player I do worry for is Joe Linton a lot in these situations because we love Joe Linton, loves the yellow card, right? He's very, very aggressive. And I do think when I'm seeing the likes of McAllister getting a red card for that challenge, that worries us because Joe goes in hard. But just got to...
It's Ray goes over the ball, isn't it, though? No stamping
it's true,
or anything.
Yeah.
Another player we haven't talked about is obviously Bruno, who, had his... I don't want to say it was an outburst, but he responded to some probably unfair criticism online, and whether that's going to be playing on his mind in the game, that could even affect whether he gets selected. We saw I think it's water for ducks back.
Yeah, we saw that the account today posted the photos and they knew what they were doing, but I like to think that I don't even think that someone's put their arm around him and or give him a bell and told him to take that tweet down. I think that he might have seen the responses it got, which were hugely positive. I was expecting to go into the reply to that tweet, and seeing one idiot saying, "No, you can't say that," but everyone was just saying, like, into them, "We're not thinking about that, mate." Like, da. However, we know we've seen it. If we go on Twitter, as much as all of us do, sometimes you do see the negative comments from the weekend. Hence why, we're not going to even talk about why that sort of comment he replied to arose. But again, you do worry a little bit that someone as emotional as him. Let's not forget he's very emotional. Yeah. We thought his season was over when he got injured against Leicester because he was crying, and he was playing two weeks later. And that's not a slight against him because he's a very emotionally driven person. And if he sees that his efforts that he's had a huge hand in is being sort of just thrown away just because of one performance against the best team in the world, it can affect certain people, but I don't think it'll affect him. I think he's seen enough, and I'm sure he's got enough people around him saying it's a very, 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 very small minority that are going to lose their mind over a 1-0 loss against Man City.
I actually thought this about him. I'm going to mention him again. Maxi, obviously. No, but the reason why
he played for any,
the reason why was he was always on social media, like dead funny as well, and like
you're right.
Some of the stuff he put on. But I remember when we signed him and he was doing all these funny things with Sunderland fans, and I thought, this could come back and like, well, like, because, you know, he might react to the wrong thing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't really happen with him, and that was fantastic. It didn't. But I actually absolutely echo with what Matty said, and I said this to the lads, was like, he's very emotional, him, like, and he's obviously read that in Erupted, and what he said's bang on, like, let's be fair.
Totally bang on.
You just got to be careful, you know what I mean? There was no need for the tweet in the first place by the account that did it. And it is just mental, isn't it? But I just find that, and I think I said this at the end of last season, I worry for that in case we do have a bad run of form. Like, if we do go through a bad run, people
Which is
are
inevitable.
going to be going. It's inevitable, and people are going to have a go. And the likes of Bruno, Besson will retaliate again, and then you know, let's just hope it doesn't happen. But that's going to be a warning. That's to be a warning to all the fan base. Just settle down. Relax, you know what I mean?
I think,
be careful what you're saying.
It's going to be. You can't put a cat. The genie's already out of the bottle. I mean, there's a massive. I don't know what the saying is, but I think I tried to quote this once on a previous podcast about people being the loudest, being the smallest minority. However you say it.
I get what you're saying.
There's so many people on Twitter that seem that reflect the fan base when really they're just 10 or 15 idiots shouting into the ether, and if them same idiots comment on each other's stuff, and it gains traction and people see it. I think. Look, footballers aren't above criticism. People have said this a million times. And if on your head, be it if you're a footballer on social media and you see things that you don't like, and people, I mean, abuse is never right. I'm talking about just criticisms of your performance as a footballer. And if you see it, then just don't be on it. However, when that criticism is totally unjustified, then I can't imagine what it's like being in that position. It must be so frustrating, especially seeing how we're on a fucking rocket ship and what we've done over the last year and a half, like Bruno said. Just look what happened with Jamal Lascelles. He was on Twitter and on Insta and all them in dark times, and he had to quit it because of absolute idiots. Absolute idiots. And, you know, it could end up happening with a player that even, and no disrespect to Jamal Lascelles, contributes more on the pitch. Jamal Lascelles does his own thing behind the scenes, and we respect that massively. But there's players that will be doing massive things on the pitch that we need, and they're all of a sudden going to be like, what am I even doing this for if I'm going to just keep getting abused?
And that's where this horrible thing comes from some of the certain media, the expectations, or the jury's expectations too much. And it's these type of things which, unfortunately,
prove them, right?
Perpetuate it, 100%.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a little bonus bit for you at the end of this podcast.
Bonus podcast. We might leave this bit for members only. No, we're not. But we will.
Red tubes for members only.
Red tubes.
Yeah.
And that's what free week pass to that, Deka.
Free week.
Yeah, Liverpool fan channel was called. I don't know. Maybe it is. But we will end it there. We're looking forward to this game. Thank you very much for watching. If you do like this sort of content, please scroll down from this video. It's not to be found on RedTube, but on YouTube. Scroll down from this content. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. And if you want to be extra nice, hit the little thumbs up or the thumbs down button to feed the algorithm and get this into the hands of other Newcastle and Liverpool fans. If you want to go one step further, and if you want to be like Graham and have the opportunity of submitting your prediction for these match previews, you can become a member. It's $2.99 or $4.99 a month. That obviously gives you the opportunity to join us on the match previews, gets you early access to videos like this, as well as access to the Telegram group. It's all kicking off for members, early access. There's a whole host of things there. But all that's left for me to say is, first of all, thank you to Graham for submitting your prediction. Thank you to Matty. Thank you to Ian. Thank you to Deka. We will go into this one a little bit battered and bruised off Man City, but hopefully we'll come out of it swinging and we'll get the 3 points at the end of Sunday. We will see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.